officials who refuse to acknowledge this genocide. When I get to 3, I want you to say ceasefire now. 1, 2, 3. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! I want to ask you one final thing, to join me in a chant. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Eid Mubarak.
That is Zorhan Mamdani. And if you recognize the name, it's because he was just made the Democrat nominee for mayor of New York City. Mayor of New York City, the financial capital of the world, the biggest city in America. He is a socialist, a self-described socialist. He's also an anti-Semite. And no, that's not me being an Islamophobe. That's just a fact. We'll show you a little bit later what is at the core of his political beliefs. My guest today is Congressman Mike Lawler out of New York. He represents the Hudson Valley, which is just north of New York City. We're going to get his thoughts on this candidate. He knows him. He worked with him in the assembly in New York City, in Albany. The two were elected into that body at the same time. And so he knows him. He says he's a nice guy, charismatic guy, but what you say, stick around. We're going to hear from Mike Lawler. Don't forget to subscribe. Just click that little subscribe button, would you? Just click it. Whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening, just click subscribe. Never miss an episode. We've got a tremendous catalog of past episodes as well, and we'd love to have you on board for every single one. This is enlightening, and it's also, I find it frightening, legitimately, what is happening in America, to America, by people who just simply don't agree with our values. And that body of people is growing. Congressman Mike Lawler of New York joins us next to discuss. Congressman Lawler, thank you so much for joining us. I know you are very concerned about what's just happened in the last week in New York City with this Democratic mayoral race. What did you? How did these results measure up to what you expected going in? Some of the stories that we tell on this podcast could keep you awake at night, but here's what you can do to help. It's called Sleep Cream. Sleep, CREME.com. It's an all-natural CBD-based topical that you put right on your skin at bedtime. I usually put it on the insides of my forearms, maybe the bottoms of my feet, and they smell fantastic. While the lavender is my favorite, they have a new rose-scented one out that is Sleep Cream Rose. It's awesome. But here's the best part. It works. And if it doesn't work for you, just let them know, and they'll give you your money back within the first 30 days. That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee. Sleep Cream, sleep, CREME.com. Use the code HOMERUN at checkout to get free standard shipping on your first order. That's the code HOMERUN at checkout for free standard shipping on your first order. If you want to sleep better, use what I use. That is Sleep Cream. Sleep, CREME.com, sleepcream.com. How did these results measure up to what you expected going in?
Well, thanks for having me, Michelle. Look, I know Zorhan. I served with him in the state legislature for one term. We both came in together. He's extremely charismatic, extremely personable and likable, and juxtaposed to Andrew Cuomo, who's a miserable human being. It does not surprise me in the least that he was able to build grassroots support. Obviously, the demographics of New York City have shifted quite a bit since Mike Bloomberg last won election in 2009. The politics of New York has shifted, certainly, during Bill de Blasio's 8 years. So it doesn't surprise me, and it didn't surprise me that he was surging. It also didn't surprise me that Andrew Cuomo ran a horrible campaign.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo did what Andrew Cuomo does. He ran a Rose Garden campaign. He didn't really talk to the press. Everything was through spokespeople. All of his events were scripted and controlled. He didn't engage the public. He didn't go into the communities. Zorhan, to his credit, did.
Yeah.
Now, Zoran's policies are a disaster for New York and a disaster for the city. But that obviously is going to play itself out in the final months here before the general election. Eric Adams, Curtis Sliwa, we'll see what Cuomo decides to do, whether or not he stays on an independent line. But certainly it speaks to where the Democratic primary electorate is. And if I were some of my Democratic colleagues in Congress, I'd be petrified. And frankly, I think Chuck Schumer is. If you look at AOC and what she is doing, she helped build this wing of the party in New York. A lot of the people that, like Zorhan, got elected in 2020, flipped or defeated a Democrat incumbent in a primary in Astoria. That's AOC, and she helped elevate these people and build that wing of the party in New York.
And she is similarly charismatic and runs the same kind of campaign and gets out there and talks to people. And she would like to unseat Chuck Schumer. Do I have that right? She wants to run for Senate?
I think that's definitely in the cards for her. I think she is looking at that. I know a lot of people think she's angling for president in 2028. I mean, maybe that's a possibility for her to try. But I think she, frankly, is probably a little bit more strategically focused on New York and defeating Senator Schumer. I think Chuck Schumer's done. I do not think Chuck Schumer will be able to run for re-election in 2028. The Democratic Party is moving away from people like him. And you see in their mealy-mouthed response, Schumer, Jeffries, Hochul, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They can't even say that they don't support this because their primary base will revolt.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they know from a general election standpoint, this is a disaster for their party.
I heard you mentioned Bill de Blasio. I heard him interviewed earlier, and he said, hey, this is so overblown. Your reaction to this guy is so overblown, not just yours, everyone's. Yeah. They thought I was going to be the socialist guy and I didn't ruin New York. All evidence to the contrary. But, so how do you measure that up with what everyone else seems to be thinking? What is de Blasio thinking?
It is delusional. I mean, this is a guy who literally in 8 years ran New York City into the ground after 20 years of strong leadership. Whatever anybody thinks about Rudy or Mike Bloomberg, at the end of the day, they really turned New York around financially. They put it in the strongest possible position in the aftermath of 9/11. They cracked down on crime, homelessness. Yeah. New York City was booming. Yeah. And, basically in 8 years, Bill de Blasio destroyed the quality of life in New York. You have crime, homelessness. Obviously, the migrant crisis spiraled out of control in the last few years. The cost of living has skyrocketed. And that's one of the things Zorhan talked about.
Yes.
Extensively.
He freezing rent, public grocery stores. In fact, let's just look at his... This is a typical example of how he ran his campaign, with cute music and fun graphics and a real confident smile, saying that public grocery stores would be part of what he would deliver to people in New York City. Let's roll that tape, Misty, my producer.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zorhan Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
I'm not sure how much savings you can get if this is, no property taxes, no rent, and there's no incentive for competition. The image it conjures up in my mind is DMV plus produce. What do you think happens here?
So true. I mean, think about it right now. You go into a CVS, right? All the shelves are locked up.
Yeah.
Why? Because people have been stealing, and then they're not even being arrested or prosecuted for it.
Which is
And
why they
so
keep stealing.
They keep stealing, and you have a calamity. What are they going to do at the publicly owned grocery store? Are they going to lock everything up, or are they just going to let people walk out with it? I mean, this concept is so ridiculous. Plus he wants to freeze the rent. Plus he wants free busing and mass transit. Meanwhile, the MTA is running billion-dollar deficits, losing $700 million a year from people jumping the turnstiles and refusing to pay to ride the subway. Plus, you add in the crime that's occurring on the subway system. And you just look at his proposals. The fact is, he intends to pay for all this by raising taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers and businesses. The problem is, and COVID showed this, businesses do not need to operate in New York anymore. They don't need the large commercial real estate, especially Wall Street. And so you're seeing Wall Street move to Palm Beach, move to Atlanta, move to Dallas, move to Charlotte, Salt Lake City, and with it taking their tax dollars. And so who is going to pay for all of these giveaways that he's talking about? And they have no concept of this whatsoever.
It's amazing to me that they can't see it, that they just, and what do you make of the fact, by the way, that, a lot of people are saying, well, it was the white elites who really pushed this guy over the edge in terms of the voting, that minorities did not vote for him. And these are the people that can escape. They can escape his policies. They can still go to Trader Joe's. They don't have any problem going to Trader Joe's now. So they'll go to Trader Joe's. They'll take their car service. They'll live in their high rent places, and they will hire their nannies instead of getting the free, childcare that this guy is promising to. He is promising the world. There is not enough money in New York City, I would argue, to cover what he is promising. And this is the problem with socialism. Eventually, you run out of other people's money. I don't know why New Yorkers fell for this.
They've been bamboozled by his charming personality. And again, juxtaposed to Andrew Cuomo. I made this point many times. When a lot of people were falling in line behind Cuomo, I said, wait a minute. Andrew Cuomo's the one who signed cashless bail into law. Andrew Cuomo's the one who signed congestion pricing into law. Andrew Cuomo's the one who made New York a sanctuary state. He's the one that banned natural gas and shut down Indian Point. So many of the problems New York is dealing with writ large stem from policies that he supported and signed into law. So he was not some savior here. The problem you had is that all the other people running were far to the left of Andrew Cuomo. And so they all ganged up and they said, don't rank Cuomo, don't rank Cuomo. And so you end up with this dynamic where Mamdani was able to get support from all the other candidates. And the progressive left is energized right now. They're angry about Donald Trump winning. They're angry at their leadership for failing, in their mind, to do anything to stop, Donald Trump and Republicans. And so they are mobilizing behind radical socialists like Zorhan, like AOC, like Bernie Sanders, because, sometimes, like on the right, the people who yell the loudest are the most extreme. And so those are the ones that they feel are fighting for them, and they're rallying behind them. And I can tell you in my district, which is just north of New York City, I have 80,000 more Democrats than Republicans. But 50% of households in my district have a cop, a firefighter, a veteran living in the household. They're not going to support this nonsense. Yeah. But the people who do, the people who are showing up at my town hall meetings and screaming and yelling, they are progressive, rich, or well-off white seniors. And it's fascinating to watch that, they're advocating for these policies that Zorhan is trying to sell. And as you pointed out, those that are less well off, the people of color, many of them did not support him because they looked at this and this doesn't sound right.
It doesn't take a lot of brain cells to understand that this doesn't sound right. He's also talking about defunding police and using that money instead for social programs. I want to go to one other glaring thing about this guy. He has led protests. He has led chants of Free Palestine, River to the Sea. He has a very rich history in his life, as short as it's been so far, of anti-Semitism. Let's just put it out there. And you've got a very dense Jewish population in New York City. How can these people possibly support him, or are they?
Okay, the city has the largest Jewish population anywhere outside the state of Israel. And my congressional district, just north, has the largest concentration of Jews anywhere in the country in a congressional district. And I can tell you, I've already heard from many Democrats in my district who are of Jewish faith, who are petrified and just absolutely mortified that this is now the face of their party. Somebody who was just at a rally where people are holding signs, globalize the Intifada, where he has made very clear he is against a Jewish state, yet he has no problem with Arab states, but he is against a Jewish state, and has talked about arresting the prime minister of Israel as mayor of New York City, that if he was mayor and Bibi Netanyahu came to New York to speak at the United Nations, for instance, that he would arrest Bibi Netanyahu under international law, even though we're not part of the ICC. And it's just, to me, it is absolutely outrageous. I think the Jewish community is going to need to speak out. So is, I'm Catholic, the Catholic community. I mean, this is craziness. It'll be a disaster for New York.
Listen, I think part of what concerns me today, and after the strikes on the Iran nuclear sites, I woke up feeling like, okay, the world's a little safer. Then this guy wins the primary, and I woke up feeling like, as much as I go to New York, New York suddenly doesn't feel as safe to me. And so there's that part. But we've got Ilhan Omar here where I live in Minnesota. We've got just kind of this growing population of politicians who are radically left, and in his case, and many of them anti-Semitic. And I just wonder how this is happening in America. And if you can sort of pull back and say, here's what the root of this is.
Yep. This is a big issue, and I've been talking about this for a long time. You look at the BDS movement, something that Zorhan has advocated for, fully supports, wants to ban New York's pension fund, for instance, in investing in Jewish companies or anything in the state of Israel. This bore out of academia. And when you see the anti-Semitism that exploded on college campuses, it's not just anti-Semitism. It's not just Jew hatred. It is a hatred of America.
Yeah.
It's a hatred of Western democracy, of capitalism, of Judeo-Christian values that are at the core of our Constitution and our rule of law. That is what it is rooted in. And these folks hate it. They hate everything about it, and they are trying to dismantle it and undermine it. And so when you see these protests and they're chanting Free Palestine, the fact is these folks have no concept of what it actually is like to live in those states, of what it is actually like to be under that type of oppressive rule and regime. You go to Iran, you will not be standing out in the streets chanting, Free America. I mean, the reality is they're chanting death to America.
Yeah.
And so you look at this whole dynamic, and I think when you see where the Democratic Party is going, when you see who is representative of the far left and the voices that have been rising up, they're rising up in opposition to everything that has built this country up: capitalism, democracy, and our Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah, it's troubling. And, I know a lot of people, not just here in Minnesota, but in the quote unquote flyover states, say, why do we always pay so much attention to New York? I think this is a bellwether. That's why. And I think you're talking about the biggest, greatest city in America, New York City. And if this can happen there, hey, in Minnesota, we elected Jesse the Body Ventura for governor. And that was an oddity, right? And I don't know that we'd see something like that again. But this is something that seems to be growing, this ideology. Look, people want to call us Islamophobic, whatever they want to call us for calling this out. This is about, as you just noted, ideology, anti-American, anti-Israel, just this whole subculture that is no longer too small to ignore? I'll give you the last word.
Look, I have a large Muslim population in my district, and I have very good relationships with them. I have an imam who I get along with exceptionally well, who really wants to forge strong relationships amongst community. That's not the issue. The issue fundamentally is the ideology that is being pursued. It is a Marxist socialist ideology that is the antithesis of everything that the United States stands for and what is at the core of our democracy, our constitutional republic. And so when you see these policies continually being pushed, it is meant to dismantle that. Yeah. And ultimately, that is the fight here. I don't care what anybody's religious background is, what their ethnic background is, what their nationality may have been. My wife is an immigrant. This is not about being against immigration in any way. This is about recognizing the ideological battle that we are dealing with. And if we don't address this in our schools, in our elections, you see what happens in New York. It doesn't just stay in New York. And as much as people may get annoyed about New York and why are we focused on it? New York is the financial capital of the world. New York is, in many respects, what the rest of the world thinks about America. It is reflective of that. Yeah. It is a melting pot of America. And so if we don't address these issues in New York, it will spiral across the country. And that is a problem.
One last thing for you. If there's a way to stop this guy from getting elected, what is that way? It seems to me the rest of New York City has to coalesce around one other guy, not three.
Correct. You can't split the vote here. And obviously this process is going to play out in the coming days and weeks. And it's going to have to become pretty apparent who has the best chance to stop him. This is not a party issue. This cannot be Republicans versus Democrats. This is about New York. It's about saving New York from sure destruction if you have a socialist leading the largest city in the world, in the country, and the financial capital of the world. So whether it's Eric Adams or Curtis Lewa, we'll see how the polling progresses. We'll see how this starts to break down. Somebody is going to have to emerge as the single voice of opposition here, and the rest of the country is going to have to rally around that person, or this is going to become a calamity, not just for Democrats, but for the country. And that would be disastrous for New York and America.
It always astonishes me how people think these are one-offs. They don't see them coming. 10 years ago, we saw some of the first trans women competing against women in sports, and everyone's like, oh, it's just a kid. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go anywhere. And here we are. And I would say the same thing about this, although we've seen this now building. You see
it building. And, it started with AOC defeating Joe Crowley in that primary in 2018. And since that time, you've gotten more people, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Pramila Jayapal. It is growing, and it's growing in New York, and that's why we're dealing with this today.
I thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to be keeping very close tabs on this. And all of us, I think, again, there are people who voted for the guy, so they're in favor of it. But the rest of us are going, what in the hell? This just has to stop.
Yeah, about 5% of the voting population voted for it. So we gotta mobilize everybody.
You gotta mobilize everybody. That's the thing. People have to get out and take part in this. This is a siren. This is an alarm bell. It's a wake up call, whatever you want to call it. Congressman Mike Lawler, it's so nice to finally meet you and talk to you. I hope we can do it again.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So our thanks to the congressman for joining us. I want to show you one more clip that I think is really enlightening about the background of Mamdani, about what is at the core of his political beliefs. Here he is in 2023 speaking at a conference, and we're just going to let this play. I'll see you on the other side of it.
If you don't clap for LU team, you're a Zionist. It's a joke. You don't have to clap. I remember on that campaign hearing the caricatures of this organization, hearing the critiques of this organization, and understanding that a number of them held truth. But what won me over was the sincerity of this organization. I was somebody who began my journey in organizing and in politics by co-founding my school's first Students for Justice in Palestine. The struggle for Palestinian liberation was at the core of my politics and continues to be. And so I struggled to find a home in New York City that could bring that politics in a sense of coherence with the politics I felt around the future of New York City. And here was this organization that endorsed BDS, something which so many organizations that were composed of Muslims were struggling to do at the time. And so I found this organization, what won me over was the sincerity of it. It was that sincerity that we mean what we say. When we say we have a socialist politic, it is consistent, it is universal, and it stands for justice in every place with no exception.
All right. BDS is Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, a Palestinian-led global campaign advocating for various forms of pressure on Israel until it complies with international law and Palestinian rights. Okay. He wants to see what he calls the liberation of Palestine. Then he should do everything in his power to call for the dissolution of Hamas, because Palestine is under the jackboot of Hamas, not Israel. There are Palestinians in the Israeli Knesset, that is their Congress. There are Palestinians. They're allowed to vote in Israel. So he is part of an ideology that is based on some really fundamental mistruths. And he wants to bring that to New York City. Justice for everyone. What does justice mean in his mind? He's promised to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. That's, I guess, one of his forms of justice. Again, as the congressman and I stated, it's going to take a lot of people to prevent this from happening. If the will of the voters in New York City vote this man into the mayor's office, it will tell us a lot about where we are as a country and that we're not seeing very clearly. So I end every podcast saying, be brave and do good. Be brave, do your research, understand what's going on here. It's not just in New York. And do good. Try to help support our police officers in New York City, whom he wants to defund, our schools, all around the nation, from this very, very leftist and scary ideology that would take our country and turn it absolutely on its head. We've seen it before. Your idea of socialism does not work, never has, and it won't work here. Be brave. Do good. Do any type of little thing you can to educate yourself about all of this. And we will see you next time. Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.